Hello, listeners at home. I'm Nathan for Cabot Tales and Trails, a page one story music collection. For today's episode, we're interviewing Jean Young. Jean Young is the owner of DJY Financial Services and operates Page One as well. She's the founder of the group, and today we'll be talking about the group's origin some more. So how did you begin writing?
Well, let's just go back track a minute or two. I didn't actually form Page One by myself. It was actually myself, Marilyn Young, and Jean Hiscock. And the way that we formed it, we went to a writers group in Corner Brook, and we started meeting there. And we're more people from Derelict than Corner Brook, so we started our own group up here. It was a meeting by, I can't remember his name, but he was a mystery writer. And he had done a reading, and he just suggested that we start a writing group back in 1987, and so we did. So as for writing, I've probably been telling stories since I've been born, so.
What inspired you to create this group?
Well, as I just told you, that's where it began. It began with a reading from an author in Corner Brook. We just found that if we get together, we write more, and we also enjoy talking with people of like minds.
That's a very nice reason to start a group.
And as for my name, I also use the name Deborah Head, which is my maiden name.
Okay, so you have a couple of names that you go by, like a pen name?
Kind of. It's both my real names, but yes.
Right.
Jean Young, the reason that I've kind of began to steer away from Jean Young is because that's a very generic name that thousands and thousands and thousands of people have, whereas Deborah Head with H-E-D-D is more unique.
Right, yeah. You'd be able to pick it out of a group more.
That's right.
Okay, so it makes it a little more unique, a little easier to find.
Absolutely.
How many books are published by Page One approximately?
I'd have to count them up, but at least 12.
At least 12, at least a dozen?
Yes.
That makes sense, because that's been going on since 1987.
That's correct. Our first one was Page One Digest, and we had no money, and when we applied for a Cabot grant, a Cabot 500 grant, they said, well, you can't operate a group with no money. We said, well, we've been doing it for 10 years. And they said, well, you have to have a balance sheet. So we made up a balance sheet saying that we had a few books and file cabinet and so on, an income and expense statement, and we applied and they gave us $10,000. And we published the Page One Digest, Volume 1. We did 1,000 copies that we sold. We don't sell anymore. It's out of print. And we went on from there.
Oh, wow. Very nice. I was reading through a bit of Page One Digest, Volume 1, and it was pretty interesting.
Yes, I think it was one of our better books, actually. Yes. And we have a lot of small publications, anthologies, and we also sponsor individual writers at time under the imprint Burnout Productions. The Cabot Productions are all group, and we try to keep a certain family-oriented level. We don't address too controversial subjects and so on, whereas the Burnout is an individual, and they can say what they like.
I have a book published through Burnout.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. It's a very good one. People should go and look at it.
Oh, thank you.
The other thing, the way that we got Burnout is Bill Byrne used to let us use an office for a number of years, and we looked up the names on the internet, and there was no B-Y-R-N out there, so that's where that name came from.
Okay, yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting way to spell Burnout.
Yes.
Yeah, I found it was a pun.
Yes.
Kind of in a way.
So that's where that name came from.
What would be like one of the first books from Burnout?
I think that may have been Terry Manuel's.
Terry Manuel's?
Terry Manuel was an interesting character, to say the least. And he wrote his memoir mostly when he was in prison.
Right.
And basically about the time that he was attacked and put into a coma when he was in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
And it was 4 months before he could speak a word. He didn't think he could walk or talk or anything. But he came out of it, he fought his way out of it, and after a number of years, he actually got enough of the book to put together, and we were pleased to help him publish it. And that's Walking into Paradise, I believe.
Walking in Paradise, yeah, I have
yes.
seen that book here.
Yes. There's another one with a similar name, but that's Terry Manuel's.
That's a very inspiring story.
It is, really, because, he had his challenges all through his life. He's not alive now. But he did get that book published, and he was very proud of it. And he was always valuable member of our group because he always had stories to tell.
Right. I guess that kind of happens with a group that goes on for so long, is that you have people that come and go.
Yes. And a lot of our members, because we've been around since 1987, so a lot of our members, unfortunately, are not in this world anymore.
Right.
But their words live on, and that's the whole point of page 1. It's to preserve memories and preserve what people think who may never have been published otherwise, and sometimes they were.
Right.
But the page 1 allows them to have their say too. And perhaps people might say, well, it's not particularly literary. Some of it is not. We try to keep it to a certain standard. But it's still valuable because it belongs to the people who are in this world now.
Right.
Who should also have their words recorded.
They really should, yeah. That's something I think that is a little underrepresented.
I think so.
Right, yeah. This is a very nice thing to do when you have...
I'll give you an example now. Ralph Nichols gave me a book of poems that his aunt had written many years ago. She was no longer alive. We didn't even know who she was. It was actually Blanche Penny. And they just sat in our cabinets like they often do for years. And when we did the last book, Page 1 Digest Volume 2, we looked at them, and some of them are very lyrical poems, like in old style poems, but very pretty. And I tracked down, Ralph had passed away by then, so I tracked down his daughter and found out who she was, and tracked down her family and got permission to print them. So her words would just not have ever been seen by anyone besides her family if Page 1 didn't exist.
I think that's a very important thing to remember, is that these people worked hard on.
They did, and the writing was valuable, and too often someone dies and someone throws the poems in the garbage or in the fire, which is really sad. If you want to think about that, Nellie Strawbridge has a story in Page 1 Digest, I believe it is, about Ben, the person that no one valued. His poems were in a box, and when he died, they just threw them away. And I often think about that it's a shame that somebody who put their heart into something and there's no record of it anywhere.
Right.
So
yeah. Very much a lost light, kind of.
It is, yeah. So it's creating a legacy.
Yeah, just like our creating a legacy project that we worked on.
Exactly, and that was a non-fictional project, which I think reflects our Humber Valley heritage and also pathways through the ages. I have interviews, and I have them transcribed in the Memorial University too, actually. Interviews 50,000 words of people that, again, many of them aren't alive now.
And many of them probably wouldn't have had their words otherwise out there.
No, they wouldn't. And Page 1, the Pathways, is written in a way that's very accessible.
Right.
For people who don't read well, because a lot of older people had a low literacy level because they weren't able to go to school.
That's a very common thing here in Newfoundland, wasn't it?
Absolutely. That book is written to make it accessible by not just putting on the same thing, because many of the interviews tend to be repetitive. So what I did is I followed a fictional family. I used the name James because that name was, I looked at the 1935 census and the telephone book at the time when I did it. And that name, besides for Young and Reed, was the most common interlink that still existed.
Oh, wow.
So that's where the name James came from. So I followed that family from the 1920s to 1950s.
It is a very interesting book. Do you have any things that stick out from Pathway Through the Ages?
I think I was surprised at how often, for example, women worked even back then, and I was also surprised at how much the war impacted us. Even though we didn't go to war, but there was blackout curtains, there were planes flying overhead, people marching in the streets to prepare for war. I found that was very interesting.
I remember they used to call it the home front.
There's a lot of stories, and we mentioned the earthquake, of course, in 1929, I believe it was.
It was 1929, yeah.
And there were people working around here in the woods, as we call it, and their families were impacted.
That was a pretty big event here in Newfoundland at the time, right?
Absolutely.
And even still, we still don't have things like that happen here.
No, so there was. I found out a lot of information by it, and I also have tapes of all those people. I think again we're preserving their oral word as well as the written word.
Right, yeah, it's a very nice archive. I think that that's a very important thing to have.
Absolutely.
So the younger people can learn from.
Yes.
And especially something like unpublished work like what we have is something that will be a very important voice too.
I do believe that's true, yes.
I remember reading there the other day, I can't remember where I read it from, where they were saying that history, a lot of it is lost because it's unpublished.
That's correct. And there's also a lot of what I do have a history and English major in the BA, and history is often written, big man history is what they call it. And what that means is they talk about the wars and they talk about the big people, but there's often people who actually make up society, who actually does all the work, and that are not represented in history. I was always quite bored because every war starts because of power, resources, and money. There's really no other reasons. So I always found that boring, so I enjoyed my Aboriginal courses much more because they actually talked about real people, in my art history courses.
Right.
Because they reflected the actual society. So in a very small way, page 1 is representing our society.
That is a very nice reflection of how page 1 operates. Let's jump ahead a little bit. I remember seeing some photos from page 1 used to do things like the festival.
Yes, we were at the Strawberry Festival for many years. We had little games and that. And one reason I would like to be there was because often families don't have a lot of money. There's nothing there for free or for low cost. So we used to have very cheap games and digging in the sand, which they all loved, little children. Find eggs, and they'd get a prize if they got always got a prize, but the bigger one, if they got one with red bow tie, the cabin with red bow tie.
Oh, okay.
And balloon bursting things and stuff. We'd also get books from the library and we'd get those out. So we did that for a number of years. But now Treehouses basically provides free activities for children, so they don't need us so much more.
That's sort of an evolution of how...
Sure it is.
I think evolution is important.
Hey.
Right? That's how we stay here for so long.
That's right. And we've also worked with artists, as you can see around this room. And we have had the Sounds of Summer a number of years. And we basically had readings and we had art people bringing their artwork and so on. And we'd have pop-up art shows and so on. We did that for a number of years too. COVID kind of threw everything out.
Oh, it did.
But we have done that, and we often sponsor things. I always work with the student or the younger person that is hired on.
Right.
To find out what their interest is. And that usually works really well, as you know.
As I know personally. Yeah, that really helps.
Yeah, and so one year we had a person who was a really good event organizer, and she did a fundraising for us with bingo, but she also had a youth night, and she had musicians and plays and everything. So she was very good at it. And another time, several times we had things for children, drama workshops and so on. So it really depends on the student as much as anything else, what we do in the summertime.
And is that something you notice with all the different students, is that they have this sort of one thing that kind of sticks out a little more, right?
Absolutely.
And everyone's unique, right?
Absolutely. And that's one reason why there's only 1 year, which was last year, and there's a story behind that we won't go into, that we did not have a summer employee.
Wow. How long has that been going on?
Since 1997.
1997, and 2024 was the only year?
Yes.
Wow.
Because what happened in 1997, we had the Cabot 500 grant.
Ah, I see.
So our student helped us type up the page 1 digest and so on.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
And the interesting thing about that is I picked out a name for it. I have this story about a woman, and I saw the name on a TV show in the credits, and the name was Twyla. And I'd never heard that name before. So that was one of the first submissions, of course, to our group. And our student that year was named Twyla.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that funny?
That's a very funny coincidence.
Synchronicity, right?
Very much so. Things have a way of doing that, don't they?
They do, for sure.
There's lots of different connections that you can make.
Yes, so that was a pretty unusual name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't see that name very often.
No, so that always happens. Often happens.
Often happens, yes. So I understand you're a published writer.
Yes.
What will be one of your later works that sort of sticks in your mind?
Well, the most professional, biggest publication I did was way back in the 1990s, Quicksilver Summer. It's a young adult novel published as High Interest Lebo Cat, published by Roussan Publishers in Montreal. And having met many writers, many authors, I know it's unusual to get published by someone who don't know you, so I'm kind of proud of that one.
That's a very big achievement.
And it has opened a lot of doors for me over the years.
Oh, for sure.
And it was shortlisted for a Newfoundland Award, so that was nice. And I had some pretty good reviews and so on. Even with the Globe and Mail, I showed you some reviews.
Yeah,
So-
I've seen some.
And it has been used in schools in New Brunswick and Newfoundland. In fact, Newfoundland requested a reprint, and I had to get a reprint done
Oh, wow.
that we did ourselves. And 250 books that were used in schools in Newfoundland. And one was used in New Brunswick too, and we didn't have any copies. And at that time, Lulu didn't exist.
Right.
And Ron Smith went and did it with us, and we stapled it together and brought it up to school.
Oh, wow.
50 copies for one class.
I did see that in a pile there.
Yes.
Very
So
nice.
that was our indie publication, first indie publication.
For first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does Quicksilver mean anyway?
We discussed that a little earlier, and I'm going to, by the way, I have a lot of sequels that I've never even sent out, don't have published, but one of these days, my ultimate goal is I've got a lot of writing that's never seen the light of day, like a lot of writers, a lot of closet writers. Basically, my goal is to have them all linked, probably to a town like Deer Lake, but maybe not exactly like it. I'll tell you how I wrote the book, first of all. I had just finished university and with 3 younger children, and a full-time job, and I managed to get through it. So when I was finished, I said, gee, I got all this time. Some young people I knew got into trouble. I said, why do young people get in trouble? And also, there's nothing written about this part of the island. There's everything written about seaports and St. John's and that. Very little about people who live around here. So I wrote a chapter, and the person next door, Shayna Cooper, actually said, well, what happened next? And I said, well, I don't know. So she said, well, you got to know. So every day she'd come down and get me to read her a chapter.
Oh, wow.
So if it wasn't for Shayna, the book probably wouldn't have been written. I should mention that, especially when on the podcast, because she probably doesn't realize how much she made a difference in my life.
Right.
And why I say that is that because it was done with a professional publisher, it gave me access to Writers Union of Canada, and by being in that, I learned to access copyright, public lending rights. I've met so many interesting people, and I made some money. So if I didn't have that book, none of that would have happened.
That is true. And that seems like that's that one little thing, right?
It does. It
Summer
turns
coming
your
over
life.
it.
Quicksilver, where I got the name. Quicksilver. Need to know how hot it really is? Use Quicksilver. Need to heal hurt? Use Quicksilver. Need to store energy in a battery? Use Quicksilver. Need to get gold from ore? Use Quicksilver. Kill a parasite. Make a hearing aid. Create a thermometer. Trigger a grenade. Use Quicksilver. Quick-moving metal, also called mercury. Criminals and tramps and business people ask Mercury, Greek messenger of the gods, to be their heavenly protector. In a Quicksilver summer, troubles can explode like a bomb. Quicksilver summer, old wounds can heal. So that's where the name Quicksilver came from.
Oh, wow, that is a very nice imagery.
And there's a group of young people who get into trouble, and once I got it wrote, there was one paragraph that stuck in my mind, and there was a character that seemed to say, well, what about me? Tell my story. So I wrote his story, and then I wrote another person's story, and then the bad guy said, I want to be. He was the one who always wanted to manipulate people.
Mm.
Manipulate people. So I ended up writing his story. So none of those are published at the moment.
Right.
And then, of course, one that I'm still in progress fixing up a bit is a young woman that was in one of the other stories. So it's kept going on. And now, like I said, I got a lot in my closet. Mm. I'm actually writing stories about the mothers of those boys.
Ah, okay.
So eventually I would like to have a whole suite of books and they're all linked in some way.
Mm.
I think that would be good. And have some middle grade ones written or half written too.
Right. That sounds very interesting. It's like a very big universe of characters.
Yes, so if I ever manage to retire, that's one of my big projects is to actually get it finished. And if there's no publisher out there, I know how to self-publish now.
That is right. That's one skill that you learned from page one, right?
Page one. And since page one, I've also helped Van Harpen publish 2 books of poems. Harvey Compton publish a memoir. And Calvin Kipnut publish a book of poems. That's under my Bit Dancer Press logo.
Hmm.
So that's mine. That's not page one. That's my publishing house.
Oh, wow.
So that's a little bit about my publishing history. And yes, I have had things published in other places, like on e-zines. That was fun to do.
Oh, wow.
I get $6 for a poem on the constellation of Orion.
Oh, wow.
On States, for example.
Oh.
It's just fun to do that. I've been published much more outside of Newfoundland than within Newfoundland.
Right.
Strangely enough. But hey, the prophet in his own country.
That is true.
So, and again, and I've actually had awards for drama in the Arts and Letters competition, strangely enough. And I've only wrote about half a dozen per days.
Oh, wow.
And so I've got an honorable mention for 2 or 3 of them. So.
Oh, that's
I actually won 3rd prize for one of them, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Anyhow, you did say that you might want me to read something.
Yeah, I would like to hear a little bit from Quicksilver Summer.
Okay, I'm just going to read from chapter 1, because that kind of makes sense, I guess. And it's written from a teenage boy's point of view. I'm Jason Abbott. Most of my life, I've been trying to prove I'm not stunned. After this summer, I've also got to prove I'm not a hardened criminal. It's hard to change a bad name in a small town. Everyone knows, or think they know, everything about you. If you'd asked anyone about me on the last day of school this year, they'd say, oh yes, he's Marcia Abbott's son. She had him when she was real young. He's a bit idle, doesn't do much in school. He's not really bad. If you'd asked them what my friends were like, they'd say, the bunch he hangs around with are all like, not much difference in any of them. They're all tarred with the same brush. Really, that's not true at all. We were the last kids to leave the schoolyard. None of us hung out together. Old test papers filled a rusty tin garbage can. The wind banged the gate against the chain link fence. All the kids with good report cards had hurried home. For once, I wanted to show my mom my report card too. I passed everything for the first time in years and years. Mind you, except for an A in art, my highest mark was 60% in math. No one else in our crowd had passed every single subject. That mattered one time. Today, I was the star. I knew how others felt. That's one reason we stuck together. Failing doesn't hurt so much when you're with friends. Even with bad reports, we were free for the summer. Free and easy. By the end of grade 9, each of us were a couple or more grades behind other kids our age. That's hard. Most of the kids in our class were smaller and younger than us. We thought about things that we dealt with 2 years ago. The kids we started school with were in higher grades. We didn't fit in there either. In the summer, this shouldn't have mattered, but it did. The guys in our gang all cut their hair short. Each of us wore a star earring, or right ear. And at last day of school, we added one more piece to our total group look. Vince, the short, nervous guy who's hardly ever passed anything, started the ball rolling. He looked at his report card and said, special aid again next year. He scrunched up the cardboard form and tossed it into the garbage can. No one's going to want to see that. He paced around a picnic table. We need more of his style, so we'll look at it like we're all together. Like what? Paul asked. He wiped his mouth on his sleeve. He just finished a big bag of cheesies. It's got to be cheap. He had a point. Report card day wasn't a time when we asked our parents for anything. Everyone wore a jean jacket. Most of the jackets had frayed collars and cuffs. We'll do something with our jackets. They're worn out anyway. Elvis pulled off his jacket. He spread it out on a picnic table. He found his compass in his backpack. This is a good sharp point. I never could draw circles with this thing. It's got to be good for something. He made a small hole and tugged. The fabric was still pretty strong. Jonathan grabbed the jacket. He stood a tiny bit shorter than me, but his muscles were the size of 2-liter Pepsi bottles. He stuck 2 fingers in the hole, gripped and yanked hard. The whole sleeve ripped all around. He gave the seam an extra tug. We handed our jackets to Jonathan and Elvis, and pretty soon we all had jean vests. Mike handed over his jacket last. While he ripped off his sleeves, he said, "Maybe we shouldn't do this." Tom and Tony, identical twins, each picked up 2 sleeves and tucked them into their jeans. "They'll lay this in alien fashion," said Tony. "Perfect when you want to hug your girl," Tom added. "We need a symbol." Joey was stretched out on a nearby picnic table. He stared up at the gathering clouds. "How about a cloud? A mushroom cloud? An atomic bomb cloud?" Here's where I came in. The art teacher had given me a whole bunch of leftover art supplies, including paint and brushes. While I painted mushroom clouds and half listened to chatter, I thought about school. "You must be getting good with the pictures, Jason." Vince looked at my report card. 50% in English. I figured you'd fail, especially after Mr. Reed lost her false teeth. I passed in a test to Miss Reed one day with a single written word. I'd drawn scenes from the play Romeo and Juliet. I hadn't read the play, but I saw 2 videos. She wasn't impressed. She yelled at me. The scalp of her dyed blonde hair turned red. Her teeth flew across the room. Just missed Rodney. He'd never said boo in his life. Well, she said my words were gibberish, pure gibberish. I kept painting, and she said the pictures were 1,000 words. There's no pleasing teachers. I guess she didn't want to see me next year. So that's at the beginning, and it just kind of introduces you to the characters.
Right, yeah. That's a very nice introduction.
Yeah, so they're each individuals. And then, of course, another one comes to join them later on, Ted.
Oh, okay.
Who, like I says, is basically the one who kind of leads them a little bit further.
Right.
Into trouble.
I see. So they
probably wouldn't have done anything that bad, but Ted was the one who kind of leads them on. You know, like he'd tell them a story and suck you in. Like he coaxed them into a robbery, right?
Right.
So that was Ted. And Ted and Jason kind of had this, they were drawn towards each other, and yet they weren't.
I see. So they're kind of drawn together, but they opposites, right?
Yes, to a great degree, yeah. Like Ted is a different kind of leader than Jason is. So that's where that came from. And basically, it's a story about peer pressure. Now, you notice and you see how dated this is by just reading it now. One time, people in school were failed and kept back if they didn't pass. Nowadays, everybody's pushed on through. So you probably wouldn't have people who were 2 grades. You wouldn't have people older than you in your class nowadays. That was then and this is now. Those were the days before internet, before computers, before cell phones, and when you were actually held accountable for your actions in school. The book is retro. I guess it's historical now. I'd laugh at that because I'm in a book club. And they said, we're doing historical fiction. And I said, when is it set? They said, in the 50s. I thought, I was born in the 50s. How dare you call that historical fiction? But apparently if it's before now, it's historical. So the 90s is now historical fiction, I guess.
Yeah. I was born in the late 90s too.
So you know how I felt.
Everything from when I was a kid now is considered retro.
Is it?
Yeah.
Times move on.
They certainly do. They evolve.
If I wrote this story now, the story in some ways would be the same, but in other ways it would be totally different.
A little different, right?
Because the music would be different, the clothes would be different. Like I said, school would be different. Even attitudes to a certain degree would be different.
Oh, I will, yes.
But it's like we're reading something from the 1800s. Hopefully the emotions are still the same.
Right.
Hopefully the relationships are still the same.
Right.
So if you can get past the differences and get into the story, you probably still enjoy it.
Oh, probably, yeah.
So
I can very much see that.
yes, it's interesting how things evolve for sure.
I was wondering now if we can talk about Cabot,
Yes,
because that's our logo, right?
that's correct. That's the page 1 logo, and I'll tell you how it came about. Thanks to Daphne Russell to a certain degree. We got the Cabot 500 grant, as I told you,
Yeah.
for our first book, but we didn't want to put John Cabot because that would kind of date it. And we said, well, what are we going to, we need a logo. What will it be? Cabot. And someone came up with the idea that a cabot, which is a cross between two animals, you know what they are?
A cat and a rabbit.
Right on. So my daughter actually drew the logo. And that's where we got it. And the cabot, of course, is a combination of the wild and the tame. The usual and the unusual. The tame and the not so tame. So that's what the Cabot Productions represent.
Mm.
It's writers from all walks of life, of all levels of professional, because our most professional writer and member is definitely Nellie Strobridge. It's 12 books, I think, and many, 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 many awards. And then we have people, one of our youngest writers, for example, was in the last digest, and he was about probably 8 or 9 at the time.
I think I did see 8
Yes.
and 9, yeah.
Yes. So we kind of go from age 8 to, and we always try to include young people
Right.
in our anthologies if we can, and to people in their 90s. So it's from all ages and all walks of life, the beginning writers and more established ones. So that's what the Cabot Productions and page 1 is all about.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like what our Facebook page bio says.
Does it?
Published and unpublished authors in Western Newfoundland.
Yes. And sometimes from outside Western Newfoundland. For
Right.
example, our Thursday the 13th. What is it? Extraordinary Things and Ordinary People.
Right.
And we use Thursday 13 because everyone uses Friday 13.
Mm.
But Thursday is the usual, normal. And that's all stories of unusual happenings that happen to people, like psychic stuff and ghost stories and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And we have submissions actually from New Brunswick even.
Oh, wow.
So
All across Canada.
sometimes, yes.
Mm.
And we always try to include writings. We try to edit it so it's that you can be proud of it.
Right.
Sometimes people object to our editing. That's a chance that you take. But not very often, but there's usually one. If you got 20 or 30 people, there's usually one that probably are not happy. And that's something that we have to learn to live with.
Right.
But I do think that it's important to have it as good as you can without changing the sound of a person's voice. You want to have it edited so that you saw the originals and you saw the vinyl and some of the stuff that we've done, you can see what I say, but we still try to keep that person's voice.
Right, the same.
Yes.
I'm looking at the time. I think that might be all the time I
I
have for
think
today.
we've done wonderful.
I think we have, yeah. So
Thank you so much, Nathan. I appreciate your interviewing us and doing all the work.
Oh, you're welcome.
Very happy to have you on board this year.
Oh, thank you very much.
Second time around, because he also helped us with our nonfiction creating a legacy. It's the history of the Upper Humber Valley, the people who came and where they came from, a little bit of history on the towns and the countries that they came from.
Right.
So it's a very nice book for anyone who needs to do some research for sure, or just want to know more about our area.
Right, yeah. I think it's a very important thing to learn about. But most of all, thank you, listeners, for listening in to our show. We'll be back again next week. Follow us on Facebook for more. This has been Nathan with Jean. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nathan. Bye.